Hello, everyone, and welcome back. My name is Emily Pelly, and I'm the publisher at Morning Dove Press. Morning Dove Press is a Christian publishing house based here in Nova Scotia, and we work with authors from across Canada to publish their stories that encourage people on their faith journey. And so I'm very excited to be here today with Jim Sutherland, because for those of you who know, Jim was our first publication here at Morning Dove Press. I have it here in my hand, The House the Captain Built, written by Jim Sutherland, illustrated by Greg David. And look at that. And believe it or not, it has been a year, Jim, a year since this book was published. So we are so excited to chat with you today.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily. As Emily said, I'm Jim Sutherland, and yeah, I'm the author of The House the Captain Built. It's a story that I didn't think that the time would ever come, and now I'm 1 year past actually having it published. So I was looking at all the alerts pop up on social media about 1 year anniversary and memory of like at this time last year book launches, and I was thinking to myself, was that actually a year ago? So, but yes, it is. Yeah. So
And
here we are.
I know, it's crazy. So let's talk about this story specifically. So tell us about The House the Captain Built. Where did the idea come from?
Well, the idea came from, it was actually a dream. My wife and I, we were down at a large ministry down in the United States, and they have a 24/7 prayer room. And I woke up one morning, and in the dream, I had a bit of backstory on myself. I grew up at the head of the Bay of Fundy, around the Joggins Fossil Cliffs area. Very, very familiar with the tides, very, very familiar with everything that actually happens there. And in the dream, I'm standing on a beach that I knew very well, but offshore, there was an island, which isn't there in real life. And on this island, there was an old abandoned house. And I remember in the dream thinking, that's strange. I've never seen that before. So I go walking over, and it's low tide. And for those who don't know, the Bay of Fundy tides, they're the highest in the world. The highest tides are about 17, 18 meters, 52 feet for the Americans. So I remember walking over in the dream around knee deep and thinking to myself, I've only got about 20 minutes before the tide changes. And if I'm not back, then I'm stuck here for the night. So I woke up with that idea rolling through my mind, and I thought, that's an interesting premise for a book. What would happen if someone went out to the island and didn't know the area and wound up getting stuck there by the tides? So we go over to the prayer room, and I'm sitting, and I just pull up my laptop, and I just start typing. And long story short, in 2 days, I had over 22,000 words. So it's a very interesting story. For some reason, it became a youth/young adult fiction story. That wasn't the original intent whenever I started writing, but in my mind, what came out was this could be a once upon a time story, once upon a time. And of course, all good youth, young adult fiction stories from my youth all began with once upon a time. So, and that's pretty much how it actually happened. And that's where the idea came from.
Yeah.
In terms of the actual content of it, I like to say a lot of the stories that I write all have to do with, it's a bit of a redemption. It's someone who doesn't realize, how do I say this? They have a power or an ability, but they just don't feel sure about themselves. And they always feel like it's like them versus the world, and like them trying to overcome, and them trying to be more than they are, but they've kind of given up, but they're kind of put into a circumstance that just draws that out of them. Right. So I don't know what you call that in terms of a story arc, but a lot of what I write all comes from that. It's, sort of that, person who's put into a struggle that they didn't want to be in, but they wind up rising above. So, yeah. And that's very much in this one as well.
Yeah, it really is. And you mentioned it turned into like a youth, like teens book. So it is a great for reading level if you're watching and have kids in their tween years and into the teenage years. It's the perfect book for them. Although as an adult, I have to say I really enjoyed it. It's a very thoughtful read. Not to give away too much of the book, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the story, because one of the unique pieces here is that the house is a character in the story itself. So it all focuses around this little boy on an adventure. and he ends up on this island with this house. But wait a second, the house is a character itself. So why did you decide to use this approach to creating a companion for the boy that was not human? You used an object. What was your idea there?
To tell you the truth, I don't know. It just came out, and it was one of those things where the way that it's written, it's not written from the comical point of view that of, well, of course the house is a character.
Right.
It's written from a point of view of that when the boy first encounters the house and then realizes that it's a sentient house who actually talks to him. That happens really on, fairly early on in the story, so that's not a giveaway. It's a surprise to the boy because he's never known that a house can't talk. And the house's response is, well, why wouldn't we be able to talk? Because of course it's a house and he's never been anywhere else in his life. So, but yeah, I really can't remember why I decided to actually do that, but it was just one of those, hey, what if things, and hey, what if things, and what if this, and what if that. And I do remember now there was a point in time in the story when the house is an abandoned house and it's been alone for a long time. The boy, through circumstances that have happened, he's alone as well. And it was one of those, I thought I could make the boy interact with another character that expresses what the house is, possibly feeling,
Right.
or I could just have the house do it.
Right.
So yeah, and that way pretty much eliminate the middleman per se. But yeah.
No, it's such a creative way to show the connection that those two characters have. No, I love it. So you mentioned writing this story when you were somewhere in prayer, like committed to prayer weekend. So talk to me a bit about how you see your faith as influencing this story. What's the connection there?
Faith influencing the story. What's really, really interesting is once the story got published and a lot of people started reading it, people would say, "Oh, things like I love how this character in the story represents how God is always there watching over us, but sometimes we just don't know it." And my first thought was just, yeah, I guess that works. We'll just go with that. And then someone was saying, oh, and all the naysayers in the story, they're all those little background voices that are always trying to stop us from doing something. And I like how you made that, just like voices that are in the background is like, and I'm like, yeah, okay, we can go with that. And what's funny is once the story got out and as people were saying things back to me, I was seeing depth in it that even though I wrote it, I wasn't even aware was even there when I actually wrote it. Because like I said, it's probably the most words that I've ever written continuously in one sitting. I mean, like 22,000 words in 2 days. And in terms of faith coming out in the story, I don't know if I could answer that one very, very well, because I'm actually seeing more and more depth in it. Like every time that I go through it again, and every time that I read it, and every time someone new reads it, they find something in it that I'm thinking to myself, okay, yes, I can actually see that. And you're very, very correct. That is there. At the time, I didn't realize it. Okay. But what I do know is, for me, it actually highlights that it's God is the source of all creation. I mean, this came at a point in time in my life when I was seeking hard after God, seeking guidance, seeking advice, seeking his presence. And this came out smack in the midst of that when I was in a place where a lot of people throw around the term thin places. And to me, a thin place is a place where people have set aside and they do something to God 24/7 in that time. So it's because of the amount of prayer and because of the amount of seeking God's face and because of the amount of worship and prayer that goes up, that area almost becomes like a spot where the veil between heaven and earth, if you want to put it that way, is really, really, really thin. So for me, it's when I get in places like that, creativity just flows.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things where if I'm writing and if I get stuck, if I put on some worship music and worship for a while, if I spend some time praying, if I spend time just like reading in the Bible, and it doesn't have to be anything specific. I can just sit and say, you know what, I haven't read Romans in a while. I'm going to read Romans, and then I'll be halfway through Romans, and then suddenly my mind will be switching over to say, hey, that block that you were having, what about this? So it's interesting how that actually goes, but yeah.
I think that's really a good point, because God created us, and if we are made in the image of God, he made us to be creative. And so when we really do
Mhm.
connect with him, it's amazing to see what will come of that. So if I understand you right, you really see this as an inspired story. So if I were to ask you what you hope readers would take from your book, there probably isn't one clear message that you would say, or is there? How would you answer that question? What do you want readers to take from your book?
That's a good question. I've actually thought about that question on and off for a while. And because I've heard so many readers say so many things that they have pulled out of the book, I used to think that it was just people to actually realize that there's value in community and there's value in being together.
Hmm.
And you basically can't be off by yourself because it'll just lead to bad things, and that you need to have people in your life in order for you to God built us to be in community, to be in community with him, to be in community with each other. And we're not meant to be off on our own. And
Hmm.
that was the message that I thought that I was the undercurrent in this, along with it being a nice, good read and a nice, good, little chapter book and all this. But as more people have talked about it, I've seen that a lot of different people are getting a lot of different things out of it.
Hmm.
Um, like there's a sub character, like it's like a sub background character that someone one time talked to me for about 25 minutes about.
Right.
And they're like, if you're writing a sequel, please tell me that this character has a bigger role, because I'd like to see how this works out and what this. And like, I'm thinking to myself, I just stuck him in there because it was something that I thought would be a good thing to do at that point, just to flesh out a certain scene.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of people are getting a lot of different things out of this, and I actually find that fascinating because, like I said, I have people asking me things. Well, whenever this happened, I love how this is an allegory for this, and I love how this is an allegory for that. And like, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, okay, I guess that'll work. Yep, yep, good, excellent. Just
Yeah. That's so awesome. I love that. And I understand how people see that, because there's so many different facets and interesting characters and elements in this story. So that's
mhm.
really great that people are getting so much from it. Okay,
Yeah,
so not to give away too much, but what are you working on now? Now it's been a year. This has been out for a
yes,
little while.
yeah.
What's on your plate right now?
What's on my plate right now is, if anyone is a writer, they will get this. Too much. Um, it's one of those things where you get writing and then another idea pops into your mind and you're just thinking to yourself as you're writing, don't think about that, don't think about that, and then you think about it and it's like, so then you got to go to a blank page and write things down. I had enough people come to me over the years. Always in the back of my mind was, is because when I wrote this story, it was only ever meant as a one of, but I've
Okay.
had enough people say to me, what happens after the end, what happens after the end, because the end, it's a happy ending. It's a tearjerker ending. I will warn you, if you're an adult, about 50% of the people who have read this who are adults have cried. So and it's a very warm, uplifting ending, but it's open-ended.
Right.
Yeah. So I had a lot of people come to me, and where the biggest idea came to me, I was in church one morning and I had a 12-year-old girl run up to me and grab me by the here and say, you have to tell me what happens to the boy in the house. And I'm like, what? And then she says to me, please tell me you're writing out part two. And I'm
Oh,
like, oh, yes, yeah. So the
oh,
idea got there. I am writing up part two where it's getting bogged down because the first book was written as a one of. I
mhm.
didn't put enough foreshadowing in it to do what I want to do in book two. So it's basically playing with words and plotting just to try to figure out how I can do book two without making it sound like it's coming across as too, I don't know, too Deus Ex Machina, like suddenly something appears magically out of the blue that solves everyone's problems kind of things. But
Right,
yeah.
right.
Uh, because it's Christmas, I'm also working on a couple of Christmas stories. I have a couple that I pulled out that I had written several years ago and I'm dusting off and re-editing. I have a few thoughts going through my mind. Um, my wife is probably going to watch this, so I will say this anyways. One of the things that I do every year for Christmas is, I haven't done it for the past couple of years, but I used to write a new story and give it to my wife for
Oh,
Christmas.
That's
So that's one of the things that I am currently working on. So I've just kind of given away one of my Christmas gifts there, but
Oh, that's right. Well, no more details then. We don't want to spoil
okay, no more details. But yeah, other than that, what I find is a bit of a distraction. I'm doing a part-time job that involves a lot of computer work. So
Oh,
when I sit down now to write,
hmm.
it feels like work.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I struggle to be creative unless it's, I don't want to say fun, but like positive and uplifting and freeing and able to free flow, because I believe that as I said, creativity comes from God. And I can't tap into that good when I'm in work focus. So, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I get
things are
that.
coming.
Yeah, like trying to find the space where creativity can flow. I know, like
Yes,
having done school or education, it's hard to do all the reading for school and then be able to sit down and enjoy creating something or writing. I do get
exactly.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope you find that happy place.
I hope so too. Yeah.
That will help your writing keep going. Well, thank you for chatting with us. So again, The House the Captain Built, written by Jim Sutherland, illustrated by Greg David, a fantastic illustrator. You need to look him
Oh,
up.
yes.
He lives
Yeah.
in Wales. And yeah, he's excellent illustrator. You can purchase your copy of this book from the Morning Dove Press online store. It is also available on Amazon.ca and Amazon.com, as well as Indigo.ca. So we're very excited that this book is getting into lots of people's hands. So thank you for joining us, Jim. Thanks for sharing about your
Thank you for
writing.
having me, Emily.
Yeah, and we wish you all a great day. God bless.
Okay. Thank you.